All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program. You know, we're talking about Johnny Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. You can pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba for yourself at your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie. You know that's the drink of choice in the ZASLOW Mansion, official beer of the program. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us here is our pal, Dolphins.com, Drive Time Podcast. Makes us smarter every time he joins the show. Travis Wingfield. Of course, he has the pre and the halftime and the post game on iHeartRadio for all the Dolphins broadcasts. And I would imagine your post game show this past Sunday afternoon was a post game unlike any other. Travis, good morning.
ZASLOW, good morning, man. I want to hear how you covered the game because, like you mentioned, we have so many avenues we do this through. And I just couldn't possibly be comprehensive enough. It felt like I always felt like I was coming up short of doing the game justice. Did you feel that way too?
Yeah, it's funny because I'll get text messages throughout the game, and you have a hard time putting the words together. Where I was just texting, one word responses, unstoppable or unbelievable, or it really was hard to put into words what was going on. We'd never seen anything like it. And yeah, like to me, there's a bigger picture involved in what we saw on Sunday. And yes, there is the micro, which is, okay, the team is really good. And yeah, they're totally a Super Bowl contender. But I'm also looking at it from a macro, which is they definitely have a coach. They definitely have a quarterback. And they got a really good front office. And so when we're talking those three things that are together, it means that, okay, will it suck if the Dolphins lose in the divisional round this year? Yeah, in the moment it'll suck. But the bigger picture is there's no reason to believe that this is not going to be a really good team for many, many years now. And that's how I choose to look at it.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I've been talking about the way this rebuild had been constructed going back to 2019 and, a little bit of a hiccup in the head coaching department of it, but you've wind up bringing in Mike McDaniel, who just finds a way to make all these pieces flourish in the best way possible. And then this year you come back and you add to it with all the weapons they have in the ground game. The offensive line looks fantastic. You've rounded out your receiving core with, critical role players who kind of fulfill different aspects of what this offense requires. But you hit the nail on the head there, ZASLOW. I mean, the head coach, quarterback, GM combination that Miami is looking at right now. I mean, I'm not going to, put the cart before the horse and start talking about championships and playoff success. But if you do look at the, elites in either conference, what's the common thread across all those football teams? They love their GM. They love their head coach. They love their quarterback. And for Miami through the first three games, the head coach is awesome. He's the talk of the league. The quarterback is first in every damn category you can possibly imagine. And the GM has assembled a roster who I think you can say goes up against anybody in the NFL, even the Eagles, who were, dominant on their road to the Super Bowl last year. So it's a good place to be. And I just love that you mentioned that because so often I think fan bases or, people associated with the team can get sucked into the trap of this is the year that certain things have to happen. Well, I mean, playoffs and deep postseason runs, sometimes there's some luck involved in that. And you can get bounced in a way that either, you run into a Patrick Mahomes who has a 450-yard day. Like things happen in this league where you don't always getting to the final mountaintop is tough. And so for this Dolphins team, I think Stephen Ross mentioned it when they first began this entire process was they want to sustain success. And the way the Dolphins are constructed right now, it looks pretty good going forward.
Yeah. Now, no team in the NFL is 50 points better than another team. A lot of really bad and or really good things need to happen over the course of the game for that to happen. The Dolphins are not 50 points better than the Broncos. So was it more about the Broncos? What's the balance between the Broncos were terrible on Sunday and the Dolphins were amazing on Sunday?
I think it was the perfect combination of both. I mean, the Dolphins are just rolling right now at a level that I don't think we've seen in a long time. And, obviously, like you said, 70 points is so crazy. But I mean, they were, taking the ball up and down the field against both LA and New England. And I think that if you look at the Dolphins' offensive production right now, it's crazy to say, but there's still some meat left on the bone. A couple of missed field goals, a turnover down in the low red zone in week number 1, some field goals you kicked down in low red zone as well. So they finally kind of found the magic formula for finding touchdowns in those low red zone situations. But I think there was a point in that game, and I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it definitely occurred, pretty early in the second half, if not before that, where guys just didn't seem that interested in, tackling and taking on blocks and getting off blocks. Like the Raheem Mostert catch and run for a touchdown. I think it was sometime middle of the third quarter where he, tight-roped at the sideline and made a guy miss. The pursuit to the football on that play, that's going to be something Vance Joseph is really harping on this week in meetings because it was just non-existent. And that was pretty frequently the case. And I think it was pretty much like once the Dolphins got off like that 3 or 4 score lead, that's kind of when it started to begin. So it was an instance where Miami, came out and put their foot on the gas pedal, and credit to them for continuing to do that. But I think at a certain point, they broke the Broncos' will in that game.
I want to talk about the offensive line here. I'm pretty comfortable now saying the offensive line has been awesome through 3 games, which we haven't said in 20 plus years down here. So I want you to give me a couple things here. Number one, tell me something about the offensive line that I don't know, that I haven't seen in these 3 games. And also, as great as they've been all 3 games, this was the first game with Teron Armstead. So how much better were they with Armstead in the lineup this weekend?
I think it was easy to forget because of how good Kendall Lamb was in his spot. And, I keep looking back. We go back to the Chris Greer comment, like Kendall Lamb and Isaiah Wynn have played 5 football games for the Dolphins, and they've all been really good tapes. Like those 2 guys alone, in terms of what the Dolphins paid to get them. And, this league that is so devoid of deep, good offensive lines across the National Football League, to get hits on guys like that a year after you had hits on big time spending sprees in free agency with Teron Armstead and Connor Williams, that's a huge boon. And then you go back to the 2020 draft class, and there's Rob Hunt, who for my money right now, if he's not the best right guard in football, he's in the conversation for the best right guard. The way he gets to the second level and wipes dudes out. But if you said you wanted to know something that maybe you don't know already, I have to go to the right tackle position in Austin Jackson, because I kind of theorized this summer watching him in training camp and in the preseason, and even going back to a couple of years ago when he played left guard. I was always impressed by his ability to make waves in the running game at either position that he played, tackle or guard. And, coming into the year, it's like, well, Kendall Lamb looks pretty good too. Maybe he's the right tackle, but the Dolphins were steadfast that Austin Jackson had that job to lose. And I kind of theorized that maybe it's because of how much he gives you in the running game, and then how Tua can kind of mitigate some of the pressure in the passing game. Because I think coming into the year, you would argue that Lamb was a step ahead in pass pro, Jackson a step ahead in run blocking. But the way that Jackson creates extra lanes off the perimeter for the way this offense wants to run that wide zone scheme and get these running backs with all that speed on the edge, and how that impacts the second level of the defense against both the run, but more importantly, the pass, and how they have to react to both those elements. I think Austin can, kind of extend your gaps out wide. And then to put it all together, like he's taken big strides in pass pro too. So not only do you get this benefit in the running game, now you have a right tackle who one-on-one has been fantastic in pass pro. His growth has been, it's almost like the poster child of like why you don't give up on talent. Because last year the injuries, took away pretty much his whole season. Always was a very athletic, smart, analytical kid. And now he's putting things together and looks damn good at right tackle for Miami.
Travis, was Tua touched on Sunday?
I think there was 1 quarterback hit. I think there was 1 quarterback hit and 2 pressures per Pro Football Focus. Like, it's a combination of play calling, offensive line, and then Tua is just, he's a damn magician. Austin said it himself at his press conference yesterday.
Like I know, like Tua's definitely getting the ball out, but there are plays where he is sitting back there and seeing what's going on and looking at several different reads, and his pocket awareness is just so much better than it was even maybe the beginning of last year, where he is getting the ball out well before anyone can even touch him.
Yeah, you got to credit too for the way he's put the work in. McDaniel always talks about the relentless passion that he has for growing and improving his game. He said he's the most coachable and the best learner he's ever been around in terms of players. And I think you saw that take part this offseason. It wasn't just about the jiu-jitsu and the rolling and trying to protect yourself, which, by the way, when you watch him, when there is pressure, it's not just when he gets hit and the way he rolls out of those hits. Like, he is fleet of foot, man, the way he's springing off the spot and making sure he protects himself from taking any, even the slightest of hits after the fact that he throws the football. That paired with the fact that I think he's a little bit quicker off the spot, like you mentioned, he's always kind of had that really good internal clock in terms of eyes in the back of his head, move around the pocket. I thought week 1 was the best off script game he's played in his entire career. And ZASLOW, when you pair that with what he's doing between the ears, pre-snap, post-snap, the way he's moving guys with those subtle pumps that he does and the ball fakes, like, I think that Tua doesn't get enough appreciation for the finer details that he executes, which, go back and watch Peyton Manning talk about practice and how he would work on handoffs, because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And the way you sell these handoffs can help you in the play action game. I think the greats really harp on these fine details. And that's why, Dan Orlovsky, JT O'Sullivan, all these quarterback gurus, they love him because they see that fine detail appreciation that he has. And you pair that with now these physical traits that are getting better and better at age 25. I don't know how you can't be thrilled as a Dolphins fan.
He's just so easy to root for also.
100%.
I mean, every time he talks, when you see him on the sidelines that entire fourth quarter cheering on his teammates, like when the Brady conversations were going on a couple years ago, for me, it was always, I want to win with our guy. Like,
agreed.
Would it be nice to have won a Super Bowl, like for it to have been us renting Tom Brady instead of the Buccaneers and they win a Super Bowl? Obviously, that'd have been amazing, but for me, I also want to win a certain way, and that's how I feel about all my teams. Like the Miami Heat too. Would I trade Bam Adebayo for Kevin Durant? No, because I want to win with Bam. I want to win a certain way, and it's the same thing here where I want to win with our guys, and winning with Tua is so much better than winning with Tom Brady or whoever else it is,
Do people that you speak to have that same mindset? Because I couldn't agree more. I've always felt that same way. Even, like if it was an Aaron Rodgers situation, whoever it might have been, like I even asked Broncos fans back when they got Peyton Manning, does it feel different because like you kind of imported this guy that like just, all right, now you're good because you have Peyton Manning? Like going through the entire draft process that year, figuring out that Tua was going to come out of school, watching him at his pro day, and like, oh, the hip looks pretty good. We can probably draft him at the 5th pick. And he's on the board and you hear his name called and you celebrate and all the fans post their videos of reacting. Like, it's the culmination of like that. And you almost feel like it's almost like a band, ZASLOW, right? Like you have a band that you love. They have a great record out that no one really knows about. And then they put that second record out and they hit the national scene. And all of a sudden your band becomes everybody's band. Like, no, we're the diehards back with that first record. And I can see why there's more fulfillment when you are there at step one.
Yeah, I want to win with my guys. Like the way that you win is meaningful to me. Not just, hey, let's hire a bunch of mercenaries and let's win. Like that stuff's important to me. What did you make of McDaniel in the second quarter, late the second quarter, going for it, 4th and 1 on their own 34? What did you think in the moment when they're lining up to go for it?
I'm always go for it, especially when your offense is as good as this one is. I do think that they need to figure out what their best plan of attack is in those 3rd and 4th and 1 situations, because, they tried 2 different things there. The tush push, as it's being called right now, which they couldn't execute with Alec Ingold under center, and then the fullback dive. I almost wondered if you just go back to the drawing board and say, like, hey, we were pretty good in our traditional running game. Let's just go back to that. Or even, Tua throwing to whoever the hell he wants to, because he's been so damn good with the football this year. But I'm always team go for it. You mentioned the post-game show. Seth is as conservative as can be. He's old school, kick the ball away. A drive that ends in kicks is a good thing. And OJ's a little bit in between those things, but I'm always like, go for it. I want to see this team go, because I believe this offense, like the way I view 4th down situations is put yourself in the defense's shoes. If you're on defense and the other team is going for it, how would you feel about it? And I think that most teams, or 31 teams, would say the Dolphins offense is on the field for 4th and 1. All right, we have to stay on the field because they're going to convert this. So I'm always team go for it no matter where you are.
Would you feel the same way if it were a better team that we're playing against? Like, for instance, if it's the exact same scenario this weekend against Buffalo?
I would, just because I think offense is the league's more tailored for offense. So I think that good offenses beat good defenses these days.
What was your opinion and your pal's opinion on the post-game show as well about not going for the 73 points?
I liked McDaniel's explanation of it. I thought that, the idea of we didn't come into this game trying to chase points, and the idea of, lining up for a field goal in a situation where like someone could get hurt. I know that's a low percentage, but just continue to play a game when you don't have to anymore, I think it was the right decision. I was very surprised that the Broncos came out and ran a snap after that. That was kind of like, hey, what I shake your hand, you shake my hand, right? But I agree with it. I know the fans didn't necessarily feel that way during the game, but we in the post game we were pretty much in lockstep that get out of here, respect the game, respect your opposition.
The crowd was booing.
That was tough.
At the end of a game, you're up by 50 points, and the crowd was booing. Yeah, I didn't like the booing. I wanted them to go for it in the spot, but with full acknowledgement that he absolutely made the right call. They did the right thing by not going for it in that spot, because for me, if you go for it there, the conversation becomes, are the Dolphins assholes and disrespectful, instead of the conversation being the Dolphins just kicked the living shit out of the Broncos. And it's not worth it. Like the way that McDaniel went about it was absolutely the right way.
I watched the broadcast again because, when I go to the games, I don't get a chance to rewatch the actual broadcast. And whenever Kevin Harlan's in the call, I have to go back and hear my guy call 10 Dolphins touchdowns. But they showed the sideline shots of Coach, and he seemed like he was in some anguish over it. Like you could see the wheels turning. Like, God, I kind of want this.
He knows his guys want him to go for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tough spot. But I absolutely think that they made the right call there. This weekend, this is a monster game, and it has a similar tone to it as last year at this time. They played very early in the year. The Dolphins won that game. Allen skipped the ball into the end zone on 4th down, and the Dolphins came away with the win. But Travis, this Dolphin team feels a lot better than that Dolphin team at that time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. The balance they have, the ability to kind of attack what defenses are vulnerable with. I'm just curious to see how defenses are going to play this Dolphins offense going forward, because they've shown you if you want to come up and bump and run and play that 2-man coverage the Chargers did, we can go for 400 plus and through the air. If you want to play 6-man boxes, we can give Raheem Mostert and Devon H. hand the football and hit a bunch of explosives in the running game. So, but for the Buffalo Bills, yeah, I'm really curious to see. Last year, I don't believe they had either safety in the game. I think Trey White was down in that game as well in the week 3 contest. So you're going to get Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White back in the lineup. Matt Milano is a guy that always seems to give us fits, whether it's, playing the curl hook zones or coming down and defending the running game. It's a great matchup, man. I think I'm inclined to think it goes more towards the way of a shootout, like, both teams scoring in the 30s, because I just think that both these offenses are in that realm of where you just can't hold them down for 60 minutes in a football game. But I'm curious just to hear takes across, people that like yourself that do this. Like, what do you think of Vic Fangio's first time going up against Josh Allen? Because that's kind of, I think, his chance this week to kind of put his stamp on this team and be like, hey, the defense is for real too.
Yeah. And I really think, like I said earlier here today, I think this is a real put everyone on notice type of game. Like I know everybody saw the Dolphins scored 70. I get it. But you go into Buffalo and you win that game, and then you're 4-0. You're already the only team in the AFC left that doesn't have a loss yet. I really feel like this weekend is a very for real put everyone on notice type of game.
And just think about from the standings perspective too. I mean, the 3 wins you have are all in conference. That's a big deal. You already have a division road win, which is a big deal because that's how tiebreakers get decided. You could hang a second divisional loss on the Buffalo Bills. You could put yourself in a situation where they have to come here and beat you to avoid a sweep in week 18, on top of the fact that you would have a 2-game lead with the half-game tiebreaker lead. I mean,
it's a monster.
Yeah, and then you have 2 home games against the Giants and Panthers after that. So you could put yourself in a position where you're going into, I'm looking at the schedule, into Halloween, like with a 2 or 3 game lead over your division rival. It'd be pretty big deal.
Travis, tell everybody how they can hear you throughout the week leading up to Sunday's game.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. This is always fun to do. The Drive Time podcast, we do it 5 days a week. I believe tomorrow's podcast will be the Dolphins and Bills game preview. Don't miss that. We'll have Joe Marino from Lockdown Bills in the podcast this week, as well as Tracy Wolfson from the CBS broadcast. Gee, spit it out, Travis. And then obviously the post-game show on iHeart on 104.9 105.9 FM,
Yep.
I believe it is. Thank you, Zaslow. And then 610 WIOD for the post-game show with me, Seth, and OJ McDuffie. And then, of course, MiamiDolphins.com, Twitter at Wingfield NFL. I'm everywhere.
Great job, Travis. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. This weekend's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. Thank you, man. You're the best.